Okay. So, well, I don't know. In terms of the assignments, next Tuesday, the second set of quotations plus comments, it's due. Then the quotations should be coming from the chapters that we have been discussing in class. We have been discussing, and so for the first set of quotations, you were using the prologue and the first chapter. So now move on to write the second, third, and this chapter, if you find it appropriate. It's only 5 quotes, you know, but they have to be meaningful enough for you to have enough comments. If you have, again, questions about that, please refer back to the raise your hand forum, because in there I gave you the example of the quotation, the example of the comments, and also more details, okay? Secondly, for this week, I placed a forum for you to participate in case you were missing any postings from the previous forums. This is the last one for the semester. So if you know for sure that you did not participate in the previous forums, that you're missing 1, 2, at least you can, you know, catch up to extent if you submit your posting. I saw 4 comments already in this forum, okay? Based on an American Life. You need to watch the video, right, for the week, and then post your comments. Or let me see if there is something else. And yes, for Tuesday, we will finish this book, Hunger of Memory. That's going to be the last session, the last chapter, and we'll be ending the conversation about the autobiography by Richard Rodriguez on his education. We can talk about the letter to Richard Rodriguez on Tuesday, okay? And so Thursday, since we no longer will be talking about this book or this the issues he presents, we will start our discussions on poetry. Puerto Rican poet Martin Espada, as I announced, will be reading his poems, and you have specific pages, right, for that book. If you go to Moodle, you see the pages, right, from this one till this one, okay? And that would be Thursday. Okay, any questions so far? Just wanted to clarify the situation for everybody, okay? Just to make it clear. I'm trying to help you out. You have more classes, and I always try to say this is coming up. Okay, so profession. Can you mention any of the topics he's writing about? Can you mention any topic at random, okay? Pertaining to this chapter. Megan, just one topic.
He talks about the civil rights movement.
Yes, that's very important for this chapter. Because he wants to make a point, he needs to refer to that. Else, anything else? One more topic.
I really haven't gotten a chance to read this chapter yet, so.
There you go. Okay, Shamani. Any topic? No answer. Kaylee. Any topic from the chapter?
Higher education.
I'm sorry?
Higher education. He talks about like,
yes,
if they had the certain education.
And at the end also that's important, higher education and what took place in the 70s. So he's referring to the 60s, but he will move on briefly to make a point, and he will refer to what took place in higher education during the 70s. You still haven't mentioned the most important topic. Let's see if somebody gets it. What is the most important topic do you think for the chapter? Jimena. I'm not getting an answer. Jaylene?
I think that the most important part of the chapter is that like he realized that there really wasn't a thing as like minority. Like he was considered a minority because of the other like students and faculty. And then like I guess like him coming to the realization because like his students were for bilingual education and he was trying to like, I guess, influence them in a way that it like they would understand his point of view, I guess you could say.
He was trying,
Yeah.
but he wasn't very successful, according to his own description. Yeah, he raises this question about who is a minority, what does it mean to be a minority, and who is going to come nearby me and tell me that I am a minority? What do they mean by that? Yeah, he writes a kind of lengthy reflection on that. I don't know, I'm receiving a couple of messages here. Okay. Consent, okay. We are on chapter 5. Thanks, Jorge. Okay. Anything else? Well, I'm gonna say it, okay? Since you are not saying it. Affirmative action. Affirmative action throughout the chapter, okay? And this should be indeed part of our conversation. Now, does anybody know what that means? What does affirmative action mean?
Hey, Professor.
Yes, go ahead.
Affirmative action, it means like the employment of people of other races just to like get a certain level of diversity in a business or corporation.
Yes, I think we have to extend. You got it, but I think we need to extend the definition. Let me see. I'm meeting again, Lindsay. I thought she was here before. Okay, she should be back. Okay, here I see Lindsay. Let me share my screen, but you can really quickly Google it up. Okay.
Is this in reference to the Civil Rights Act?
Yeah, I think so. So.
If it's in reference with the Civil Rights Act, it was where a court found that an employee could not engage in discriminatory actions.
Beautifully, yeah, you have said it. And so that was the trigger for this kind of policy implemented across the country. Let me see, I did, I wanted to give us a simple definition, so I just asked the question. And this is what I found. Affirmative action is a policy in which an individual's color, race, as Shamani was saying, and notice Shamani, sex, religion, or national origin are taken into account to increase opportunities provided to and I think you were referring to this, underrepresented part of society. So this is the basics. And you can explain it in a different way, okay? But basically, we have disparities in society, and yes, the civil rights movement was pushing forward an agenda for opening up society, right? And making it more inclusive, indeed. So, but for that, you need to mention exclusion, right? If you're gonna make it more inclusive, then exclusion is happening. And here we have a policy pertaining to employment and who gets to be employed or not and why. So affirmative action was a way then, as you can see, to provide opportunities to people, folks who were not necessarily represented in institutions, in say, I don't know what else, let's say colleges, why not, right? Any place of employment, but I want to keep in mind large places of employment, okay? So to make it really significant in society. I'm not talking about a little store, right? lost in a little town. I'm talking about policy that will be implemented so that society changes. And if anybody was being excluded, discriminated against, then they'll have an opportunity now. And as you can see right here, just to make it more historical, right? In response to the civil rights movement, President John F. Kennedy created a Committee on Equal Employment Opportunity in 1961 and issued executive order, and then you have it 109.25, which used the term affirmative action, bless you, to refer to measures designed to achieve non-discrimination. Non-discrimination. Okay, so that's the background information, right? That's the background information. Now, if you're saying that the civil rights movement was an important factor in creating this approach to employment or participation, right, of people in the States, that means that all those who were part of this social movement were supporting affirmative action. I noticed John F. Kennedy created this committee, right? And so on and so forth. So we're talking about African Americans. We're talking about Latinos. We're talking about women in general. We are talking about Asian Americans. And I think, and you can give me the date if you know it, but what about disabilities, folks with disabilities, right? I think that legislation was put together at a later time, okay? And that also had to do with this idea of being, right, of including people, making possible for people to move forward in society. And indeed, this has to do tremendously with social mobility. But at the core of it is also that what kind of this question maybe, what kind of society do we aspire to have or do we ambition? And are we privileging only a few people or some people because we have biases? Are we using biases and are we not aware about our, say, cultural, political, linguistic, racial biases? And what can we do to address them in our society, okay? And so that's the background information, okay? The next question would be for me, in case you don't, I don't know if you have a question, but would be, then what does he think about this? How does he places himself within this movement, within this push, you know? For opening society to new people. Let me see. Let me put it, I'm thinking this is, you know, this thought is in my mind, it's on my mind right now, I should say it. One way that people started questioning affirmative action was that this was creating quotas. Okay, we should not be creating quotas in American society. Because this is not giving everybody fair play. We're just determining that because people, some kind of people are not here, we need them in place. Of course, when people were saying that, quotas, you know, oh, that's the monster. The monster is quotas. They were saying they are not qualified. You are just placing them because you, right, have determined that they, because of racial factors, gender factors, and you name them, they should be here. But what about qualifications? So quotas. So this, as you can see, is a push against the civil rights movement and what the movement was trying to do in America. And it pertains to the 70s, 80s, and so on and so forth, right? Because in a democratic society, what happens, as you know, is that we have clashes of ideas, clashes of social movements, different ways of envisioning society. and also different viewpoints regarding specific policies and legislation, right? As we all know. So that's part of the situation here, okay? But then let me go to, I guess I wanna go to page 144 in my book, which in your book should be 154. So please, if you have the black book, go to 154, and I'll go to 144, which is the beginning actually of the chapter. So minority student, that was the label I bore in college at Stanford, then in graduate school at Columbia and Berkeley, a non-white reader of these British writers. Then immediately he mentions affirmative action. In the late 1960s, non-white Americans clamored for access to higher education, and I became a principal beneficiary of the Academy's response, its program of affirmative action. And here he begins, right? His argument against affirmative action. How can it be that a Mexican-American boy, right, man, will go against this? How can it be? Well, he says it in the prologue already, remember? And he will say it, repeat it in here. In the prologue, if we go to the prologue again, he says that depending on how you view him, right? And how many, and how Chicanos saw him, and I'm going to repeat this segment again. I have become notorious among certain leaders of America's ethnic left. I am considered a dupe, an ass, the fool, Tom Brown, the brown Uncle Tom, interpreting the writing on the wall to a bunch of cigar-smoking pharaohs. Okay? So he knows that he can be accused immediately of selling out, of not being Mexican-American enough, of not defending everything that people were clamoring for during the 60s. And specifically, remember, 2 points, 2 major targets: bilingual education, in his case, right? And affirmative action, in his case. So this is the second one. This is the second one. When I sought admission to graduate school, when I applied to fellowships and summer study grants, when I needed a teaching assistantship, my Spanish surname on the dark mark in the space indicating my race, check 1, nearly always got me whatever I asked for. Okay. I say it with anger. It is a term that should never have been foisted, minority, on me. I was wrong to accept. I shouldn't have accepted, according to him, the term minority to label me. Because he's saying, I am not a cultural minority. His argument is kind of a bit more complicated, okay, along the chapter. I am not, he says, a cultural minority. Do you know what he means by that? I mean, because he says, then I can be a minority in some sense, right? But in a cultural sense, I am not a minority. What we are trying to do here is our best to understand his argument, as you can see. This is what we are doing, okay? What kind of case is he presenting about education, okay? And how is he arguing about it? So it doesn't mean that we need to agree. It doesn't mean that we have to disagree, okay? It means that can we respect, and this would be my initial approach, can we respect him in the sense of respecting his ideas and trying to understand his ideas? And where is he coming from to say what he's saying? because we could go this way. Oh, let's dismiss this guy. Okay, he's a coconut, as he will say, I think in this chapter. Brown on the outside, white in the outside, in the inside. Okay, he says that. Okay, like people could say that about him. Because when we do that, we don't hear, we don't listen to him at all. Okay, from the very beginning, he's pushing our buttons, and then forget about this guy, right? But what about taking the other route, which is, what is he saying? How is he arguing? What are his ideas? Why is he thinking in this fashion if he is, a Mexican-American person? So I go back to my question. What does he mean by this? In a cultural sense, I am not a minority. What is your answer?
That he's considers himself fully assimilated into American and predominantly white culture by the time he's in high school. He no longer really speaks Spanish easily, and he doesn't see himself in that culture anymore.
I think this is an excellent answer. Yes, because he was talking about assimilation. The complication, Megan, remember in the previous chapter, because he always complicates the situation, okay? Remember what he said about his parents, that and how religion was important for him. Remember that he said, the only institution that treated well my parents was the Catholic Church. The only institution that made them felt they were intelligent, talented, thoughtful people, reflective people, reflecting on their lives was this institution. The rest did not pay attention to my parents, which means I love my parents, who are Mexican, right? And at the same time, I saw how difficult it was for them. And remember what he said? My parents also always told me to say, I am Mexican. I am Mexican. I never denied at all that I was a Mexican. If somebody would ask me, I would say, what is your ancestry? Mexican, okay? So he's saying that, as you can see, because yes, he argues in favor of assimilation, but at the same time he's saying, I respect my ethnicity. Assimilating to the culture of the country doesn't mean, for me at least, that I'm going to deny my ancestry. So it's complicated, okay? I just want to acknowledge, again, the way he thinks. I don't want to simplify the way he thinks, okay? So I'm not disagreeing with you, Megan. I'm just trying to add to the situation. I go back to the question. What does he mean by not being a minority in the sense, in the cultural sense? I think we need to add something here, add something important. Okay, I'm gonna.
Like,
I'm
I
sorry.
think I think he's referring to himself that he doesn't consider himself like small or inferior in his culture and identity.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I totally agree with that. But he does say that in the chapters that he was the son of a working class family. He was the son of a poor family. He came from Los Pobres. And notice that, again, as Shamani is indicating, he doesn't want to deny that. On the contrary, he wants to put it on the table, okay? This is my social class background, because class background for him is so important. But there's something else. There's something else that makes him say, culturally, I am not a minority, okay? Culturally, actually, Shamani, what you're saying is the other side of the coin. When you say that he's acknowledging, his ethnicity, and I added class, that would be the reason for calling him a minority, according to him, okay, not according to me, according to him. Okay, yeah, if you're gonna call me a minority because of that, I will take it. But in some sense, I'm going to say, no, I am not a minority. So that's not my reason for saying that I am not a minority. If I'm going to say that I'm a minority because of my ancestry or my folks, right, and my social, and my class background, yes, I can go with that. Okay, but it's something that will not allow me to accept that. Lindsay.
I remember seeing in the documentary that the way I think of it, he said he was an American. He was born in America, so he doesn't consider himself a minority in the cultural sense, because culturally he's Mexican American.
Well, that would make him a part of one of the protected classes in terms of legislation, right?
Right.
Legally protected classes. So in that case, he could be classified as a minority, okay? And I don't think he disagrees with that necessarily, okay? I don't think he disagrees with that. Notice we're talking about also, this may be obvious, but I need to say it because this is a class about Latinos. We're talking about people who are citizens of the country, right? And so we're excluding those who are non-citizens and who are here with us in the country, within the country, some of which may be Latino as well, okay? So in the next page, I'm sorry, next page for me is 144. The year was 1967. And so he's putting us, you know, in the context of this, the civil rights movement, but more or less at the end. And he says, and the climax maybe of the moment, the obstacle midway through the paragraph, he says, the obstacle was institutional racism, okay? Preventing people from entering, right? Say education, college, as we, you know, hear, this kind of institution. Systematic racism was preventing people from, according to those he is attacking, okay? Institutional racism was the root cause of this exclusionary society, okay? And he says, guys, notice what is happening here, okay? This is his viewpoint, same paragraph. Most Blacks simply couldn't afford tuition for higher education. Money, social class conditions. And because the primary and secondary schooling Blacks received was usually poor, few qualified for admissions. So he's blaming the educational system. What is the educational system doing to, right? Remember, he's not only saying Black, okay? Careful with that. He's saying poor. It's combining both, okay? Many, and notice this, his point, he's coming back to this point over and over. If you read it carefully, many were so culturally alienated. Remember we mentioned that at the beginning with the prologue, alienation, to be alienated. And I asked you a question, what does it mean, you know, to be alienated, to feel alienated? And you gave me good answers. So I repeat, many were so culturally alienated that they never thought to apply to a college. They couldn't even imagine themselves going to college. So that was the situation, okay? So his argument is maybe, I was never culturally alienated, as you're saying, as Lindsay was suggesting, as Megan was saying, right? I was never culturally alienated. Yes, I was one of the poor, but something allowed me to assimilate. Question, what was that something that allowed him to assimilate?
Learning English.
Yes. And overall, until he goes to college. He does say that that's crucial, okay? And that's why he argues against bilingual education. Without my going into English right away, right off the bat, right? And that nun that kept hours and hours talking to me, going slowly over the reading for a year or so, right? That made it possible for me. Indeed, so I agree with that. Indeed, we need to agree with that. But education, guys, according to him, it's my education that provided me with the means to assimilate and not to feel alienated. Because the problem here with the equation between black and poor, right? It's, according to him, that section of society is alienated. It's not actually integrated somehow. He would argue, I guess, they are not assimilated, because he sees assimilation as something positive, okay, that will allow for social mobility, because that's the question for him, okay? How does a democracy such as ours, right, provide for people who are the most alienated within the country for possibilities of social mobility, okay? So that we won't let anybody be in a little corner, right, dissociated from the means of making progress in their lives. Social, class, I don't know, whatever progress that education, health also, we can add today, anything that you can think of. And then on page 145, let me see if I included, yes, I did include this. So what was the complication for him according during these times, what was the complication regarding the perception that some people had as to how to produce access, okay, to education? I find this explained on page 145. The paragraph begins, I think that's in my book, right? So in your book, of course, I began with 154. He writes, seeing the problem solely only, ¿verdad? In racial terms, they pressured universities and colleges to admit more Black students and hire more Black faculty members. I'm going to repeat the sentence that is crucial here. Seeing the problem only in racial terms, they pressured universities and colleges to admit, right? There were demands for financial aid programs and tutoring help and more aggressive student recruitment. But this, notice the accusation, because here comes the accusation, and he's accusing society, okay, American society. But this was all. This was all. The aim was to integrate higher education in the North. So no one seemed troubled by the fact that those who were in the best position to benefit from such reform were those Blacks least victimized by racism or any other social oppression. Those culturally, if not always economically, of the middle class. What is his accusation? Why does he think that this was a sort of perversion, okay? That this was a misconception as to how to proceed to produce access. What is he accusing American society? Legislators, maybe people in the left, okay? Most likely. What are they doing? what are they blind about?
Racism.
No, because he says, you know, race was the factor. Race will allow people, race is the factor that is preventing people from, this is the argument, right? That race is preventing, or racism is preventing people from entering institutions. And he's saying Chicanos, among other people, are saying that that's the main factor. But he's also talking about, you know, the most likely some African Americans in positions of leadership. He's disagreeing with them. And by the way, he's not disagreeing about racism, right? Just in case.
Would it be poverty?
Yes. Why? Yes, that's what he's saying. What is that? What is the problem here?
That poverty is the main reason people are able to have very well educated and then be able to go to excellent schools. It's not racism.
I think in his viewpoint, I agree that he's putting the emphasis on that class. Although he tries not to dislodge that, disconnected from race, okay? But yes, I think we need to agree with that, with what you're saying, Miguel. He's saying these guys from maybe from the middle classes, you know, were thinking that just because they would allow anybody to be part of an institution, that they would be fixing the problem of inclusion in American society. But the fact was that we had middle class Black folks that were, you know, already part of the system, part of the educational system. In some sense, I think he's saying these Black folks were already assimilated into the culture, right, of the United States. But what about the poor? What about those kids who were, you know, in poor schools, receiving poor education? Is somebody thinking about them? Those in the left, according to him, right? Again, are they thinking really about the poor? Or are they just using one criterion, right? The criterion is race. Okay, you have this kind of color, let them in, according to him. And this was an argument, right, in society, and has been a tremendous argument in society, right? He explores the same argument in more detail, but his cause then, you know, the big flag he's trying to wave all the time then is class, poor, los pobres. What is going on with los pobres? Are we acknowledging the poor and their situation? Can we say that a middle-class Mexican American person is the same as a working-class Mexican American person in the United States? And he applies that to, you know, the African American population and to anybody else, by the way, even extending it to whites, because he's saying and this was also part of a political argument, right? And it has been. What is going on? Are we dismissing people just so simply because we are using one criteria, right? For admissions or employment and so on and so forth. Let's go deeper into his argument, okay? Let's explore it in more detail, okay, even. And I think we can go, let's go to page 149 in my book, which is in yours. Well, I think I will have to guide you through, right? So page 147 for you, if you don't have my book, is 157. So I'll go to my page 147. And on page 147, notice what he says in your page. the paragraph that begins 1969, 1970, 1971, he says, regarding the word minority, I was not in a cultural sense a minority, an alien from public life. And the end of the paragraph, the reason I was no longer a minority was because I had become a student. So why is he not a minority? Because he had not just an education, guys, but an excellent education, he's saying. My education was such that permitted for me to attain a public voice in American society. Yes, English, as Megan is saying, is crucial, right? But it's also all the time that I was reflecting, writing, discussing stuff with my classmates, catching up to the middle class white students that were surrounding me in my school, catching up quickly, fastly, spending hours and hours and hours reading, right? Remember what I said about being exceptional? So the reason I was no longer a minority was because I had become a student. And then he says, well, let's see if I can find the page, because I want to go to page 149 in my book. So I'll read the beginnings of the paragraphs, okay, to lead you to my page. In conversations with faculty members. Next paragraph. In 1973, I wrote and had published 2 essays. Let's keep on going. My essays served as my authority to speak at the Marriott. Next paragraph. It is important now to remember that the early leaders of the Northern, and here it is. Here is where I wanted to be. Okay. So I'm going to ask Jorge to read. Could you read, Jorge? Because, you know, I'm talking too much.
Where am I at right now?
Paragraph, it is important now to remember that the early leaders of the Northern civil rights. Are you there?
If you have the same book as me, it's going to be 159.
Yeah, I found it. It is important now to remember that the early leaders of the Northern civil rights movement were from the South. The civil rights movement in the North depended upon an understanding of racism derived from the South. Here was the source of the mistaken strategy. The reason why activists could so easily ignore class and could consider race alone a sufficient measure of social oppression. In the South, where racism had been legally enforced, all blacks suffered discrimination uniformly. The black businessman and the black maid were undifferentiated, I don't know how to pronounce that one,
Well done, yeah, that's okay.
by the law that forced them to the rear of the bus. Thus, when segregation laws were challenged and finally defeated, the benefit to one became a benefit for all. The integration of an institution by a single black implied an advance for the entire race. There?
And that's the end of the paragraph, right?
Yeah.
So he's talking about people in the North, and he's probably talking about people in the liberal side of the political spectrum, okay? The left side of the spectrum. And what is he saying that they are forgetting? Jimena. Oh, I don't know if you can say something, Jimena. Are you able to? The question is, why were they, you know, mistaken in their approach to inclusion? What was that they were, wrong about, according to him? Well, I'm going to ask Shamani. Shamani, what is his idea? What is this complication, between what took place in the South for him and what people are saying in the North about inclusion? I cannot hear you, Jimena. No, you're muted. You are muted, just in case. So no answer from Shamani. And Jimena is unable to. Okay, Lee.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Yes, if you return to the paragraph, he writes, here was the source of the mistaken strategy, right? Here was the source. So what is wrong? What is wrong with this strategy? What is wrong with this thinking from people in the North?
Not exactly sure. I know like the South and North have like very different views on it, but I'm not sure the answer to the question though.
Yeah, we're talking here about why people were discriminated against, so they couldn't get into, say, having a decent education, or why they couldn't, have access to productive employment, right? Not just being part of the laborers. What was happening that was preventing people from improving their lives, their life conditions?
Their race.
The question there would be, who is saying that, right? Because of the paragraph of what he's saying, trying to say, we would have to say yes to your statement, to your short statement. We would have to say yes, that people in the North were saying, because of race, people are being prevented from whatever, right? From. He's arguing, no, that's not the case. That, okay, people were excluded in the South. It was clear that we're excluded because of race. But discrimination is happening in a more complex way here, because some people already are middle class, he's saying, right? In the North, I guess, activists could so easily ignore class and could consider race alone a sufficient measure of social oppression. No, you need to factor in class. You need to factor in class for if you're going to be talking about exclusion and lack of possibilities for people in America. It's not only race. You're fooling yourselves if you think that only race will be the only factor for people, to be prevented from becoming first-class citizens in the States. It's class, you're forgetting it, okay? Yes, in the South, racism did not allow people, okay, to get access. But was that truly affecting this side of the country in the same fashion? He says actually something stronger, because he goes, in the South where racism had been legally enforced racism, okay? You can apply that criterion. But if the North, racism was not legally enforced, then we need to paint a more complex picture for what is happening in society. And again, his point, right? Social class, what is happening with that? Are we paying attention to that? Or do we believe that just because a person has a specific coloration, right, that they are starting at the same level, right, as anybody else? can we look into some kind of intersection here? Maybe, since we talked about intersectionality nowadays, can we talk about some kind of intersection between class and color, race, to make the situation more complex? Because if not, we are privileging some people. He argues. We are just bringing people, say, he's very blunt, okay, so I'm gonna repeat his argument. Let's say we bring people into a college, and we think that just because they were underrepresented, that just because of that, they will succeed. No, he says, if they did not receive a good schooling, if they were coming most likely from poor families, they were so disadvantaged. Yes, they may have the coloration, but they will not succeed. Whereas if they had that kind of complexion and they did receive good schooling, like I did, right? He says, like myself. And also they were succeeding throughout the system of education, they will flourish, they will blossom. Plus, they had the economic means because their parents were working already. Maybe they were lawyers or they were something, right? They were at least middle class, having good employment. They have the subconscious of the middle class. Because when you're middle class, you don't even think that you are middle class, right? Maybe you are middle class. So you teach your kids the middle class manners. And you don't say, oh, this is middle class. Maybe sometimes you do, okay? Some people, maybe people, but what about the poor? What about the poor? He argues if they have different codes and they don't have the codes of the middle class, will they succeed? How can we make it so that more people can succeed? According to him, American society is failing many people because of this, because they are not taking into account one crucial side of the situation. Any questions? If you continue, because this is the core of the argument, okay? This is actually the core of his argument. If you continue reading, the next paragraph reads, from the experience of Southern Blacks, correct? That's the next paragraph, same page. And he, midway through the page, writes, Americans learn to look beyond class in considering social oppression, which is his basic statement, okay? The importance of class. Notice that he's saying that not as an abstraction, but he's saying it because it's his own autobiography, it's his life. It's his life. It's the way he sees himself that makes him write in this fashion, okay? Is the way he creates a narrative of his life that triggers this kind of perception, according to him, right? And in the next paragraph, he's even more explicit. So maybe we should read it again. We should read it because here he repeats the argument. And I'm going to ask Jaylene to read it. In the era of affirmative action.
In the era of affirmative action, it became more and more difficult to distinguish the middle class victim of social oppression from the lower class victim. In fact, it became hard to say when a person ever stopped being disadvantaged. Quite apart from poverty, the variety of social oppressions that most concerned Americans involved unchangeable conditions. One does not ever stop being a woman. One does not ever stop being aged, short of death. One does not stop being a quadriplegic. The commonplace heard in the 60s was precisely this. A Black never stopped being Black. The assertion became a kind of justification for affirmative action.
Yes, he keeps attacking, the legislation, okay? And he says, No, I'm going to argue that we need to go deeper, that coloration is not enough, right? And then he goes and says, well, notice how his argument goes. That, for example, if you're a woman, okay, if you're a woman, we need to read more into that, because not a single, his argument is not just because you are a woman, it means that you are underprivileged. What if you are a woman, but you are upper middle class? Why should we give you, the same start, if you will, or to a person who hasn't had all the opportunities that you have had as a woman from the middle class? That couldn't, according to him, that doesn't make sense. Okay. No, we need to take into consideration how you are starting, and but class here for this legislation, according to him, it's not part of the, what is it, the landscape, part of the picture, okay, part of the picture. And then he goes to say, to be respectful, okay, and again, to try to understand his viewpoint and not just to dismiss it. He goes and says, for my part, I believe the Black lawyer who tells me that there is never a day in his life when he forgets he's Black. I believe him. I believe him, right? I believe the Black business executive who says that although he drives an expensive foreign car, he must be especially wary when a policeman stops him for speeding. I believe him, he says. I'm not denying that. I do not doubt that middle-class Blacks need to remain watchful when they look for jobs or try to rent, or when they travel to unfamiliar towns. I believe them. I trust in what they are saying. You cannot know what it is like for us. A Black woman shouted at me one day from an audience somewhere. Like a white liberal, I was awed, shaken by her rage. I gave her the point, but now I must insist, and here we come back, full circle somehow, must risk presumption to say that I do not think that all Blacks are equally, and within quotation marks, right, Black, which is the same as saying not all women are equally women. Not all Mexican Americans are equally Mexican American, and so on and so forth, right? But the key word, one important word for me in this line, and I would like for you to help me out, is this one. I must insist, must risk presumption. Could you give me maybe a synonym of presumption? Anybody, presumption? What would be a synonym? I must risk presumption.
Likelihood? Oh wait, anticipation, maybe?
Maybe in some sense, okay? I think I related to the word presuming, to presume, presumption.
So like assumption?
Yeah,
Okay.
assumption. Yeah. I think he's trying to say to us, I must risk sounding arrogant. Okay, I must risk being a bit arrogant. Why is this important to me in my reading of this segment? Because he's trying to say to all of us, I know what I'm saying. Okay, I know what I'm saying must be very displeasing to many people, and I'm not trying to negate their thoughts, but this is what I truly believe in. And I need to take the risk of saying it. Although people will tell me you are so wrong. Race is the factor, okay? And you're, I don't know, what could we say? You know, I would have to create an argument against his argument, saying you're foolish yourself, you're foolish, you are, you're fooling yourself believing that connection that you're trying to create is the connection that we need to make in America, because in fact, it's clearly race. It's clearly race. That is preventing people from progressing in American society, and we are keeping them, you know, as second, third class citizens. And they, so that's why this paragraph is important to us as well, because he's saying, you know, I believe them, I trust them, I trust the lawyer. And then, please hear me out. This is what I think. I'm going to look presumptuous to you, arrogant to you, but I'm going to say it. And this is what I have to say. I do not think that all Blacks are equally Black. And then he can, based on that, say, I'm going to dismiss this policy or legislation on, what is it? I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the affirmative action legislation, right? And then notice, now he says it, because he had to say something about African Americans first, right? But then notice what he says. Next paragraph. All Mexican Americans certainly are not equally Mexican Americans. And I'm pretty sure he was, you know, saying everything that he said before to be able to write this sentence. All Mexican Americans certainly are not equally Mexican Americans. What does he mean by that?
He's talking about the class again. Like, not everyone is equal. Like, if you're poorer than someone else, like, you're not going to be equal to that person technically.
Yeah, and the complication is that how do we start? You know, if I am a white person, because this is part of his argument, coming to college and say I am middle class, or I am coming, according to him, from a poor family of, you know, scarce means, as little social contacts, parents just working maybe in the fields or factories and so on and so forth. Parents who maybe finished high school, but never went to college. His argument would be, this is an unequal situation. Yes, you are, you know, you are here, but did we help you as a society? Or did we pass you? Okay, notice that I'm talking about a white kid. Did we pass you from class to class to class? Why? Because we were evil? Maybe. But more significantly, in my view, would be, or is it because the system, the educational system and our society is not really making the effort, you know, to bring us at the same level together, knowing that, understanding that we have differences, but that we need to support these people more than these people because they have advantages already, right? So we need to make sure that we help these folks tremendously so that they kind of catch up, okay? And we envision, or we produce that kind of equality that we need, okay? That we need. But starting from the awareness that there are tremendous disparities. And he's talking about social class disparities in America, okay? So he says about himself, yeah, I am a minority in the sense that I'm a Mexican-American person. Also that I'm coming, you know, from Los Pobres. But I'm not a minority in the sense that I'm highly educated. So when I enter college, or when I go to graduate school, you know, I will succeed, but I'll see many not succeed. I will see many. And then notice one more thing that can happen to him. I will feel guilty. Secondly, I will blame my society because we are in a mess. This is a mess that we have contributed to do, okay? And so who's taking responsibility for this? This is his big, you know, I accuse moment. I accuse my own society that I love. Notice, because he said, I assimilated, right? I am American. But I am in disagreement with this America that I see. And to further go that line, he finishes the chapter. If you go to page 165 in my book, which is, let's go to page 165. 64, I said, okay, 164, which is 177. So if we move away from the 60s, let's see what he's saying about the 70s. Again, page 164 in my case, 177 in your case. 164. Okay, and I'm going to ask, could somebody read? Lindsay, could you read?
Sure. What were the pages? Professor?
Sure. And you have the brown book, right?
Yes.
So it's page 164, 164, and the paragraph that I'm asking you to read starts this way. I was at Berkeley in 1974 when the romantic 60s came to an end.
It's on 164.
Yes, 164, brown edition.
I don't see it here. It starts with the Civil War.
Okay, so we don't have the same edition then.
No, but I'll still read.
Yeah, but I need you to be at my page. If not, it doesn't make sense. So I'm gonna just try to read it. The black cover book, Lindsay, let me see, would be 177 in case you find it in there. It's at the end of the chapter. So it was at Berkeley in 1974 when the romantic
Yes, I
60s
found it. I found
came
it.
to an end.
So I have the black version, the black book then. I was at Berkeley in 1974 when the romantic 60s came to an end. A more pragmatic time succeeded it. Reporters for Time and for CBS informed the nation that a new mood of careerism had seized the campus. Suddenly, the students in my classes admitted to being ambitious for good grades. Freshmen had already mapped the progress that would lead them to business or law school. Professional schools were only the places which dispensed diplomas promising jobs. Students would come to my office to challenge the grade of B they had received. Couldn't you please reconsider, Professor Rodriguez? I need an A- for my transcript. They would sit in the back rows of my classes, surreptitiously reading
Yes, I'm saying yes.
Okay. Reading biochemistry textbooks. While I lectured on Spencer or Dickens, insisting that the reader of literature is made in mind of his social position and privilege. In such classrooms, before students who were so anxious and uncertain of their social advancement, the enlarging lessons of the humanities seemed an irrelevance.
Okay.
I cannot say. Oh,
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. That's the paragraph.
no problem.
So, but basically, what is he saying? In the 60s, we had this strong social movement, right? The civil rights movement. implementation of the affirmative action legislation, the beginning of it, right? And then all of a sudden we go in colleges and universities about careerism. All that mattered to these privileged students was the grades. And notice, nobody was caring about what's happening like to our community. What mattered for them was to go their own little channel, right? And get to have their own little job. So please give me the grades, right? And he writes next, students at the new middle class campus lacked deep appreciation of their social advantages. So they weren't, okay, they had their own privileges and they were happy with that. And if you cannot succeed in here, I guess you will not. But I'll do my best to get ahead of the crowd, okay? It's very interesting because at the same time, one thinks that he's pushing, his own agenda in terms of his success. But then all of a sudden, he talks about communities of disadvantaged people and how we need to address disadvantages in American society, and mostly in education, as you can see, right? So is he rooting for himself only, or is he actually rooting for the community he is part of, the suffering of people, okay? I think the answer is always a bit more complex. But I just want you to reinforce this idea that he was actually writing against what the majority of Mexican-American youth of his own generation, Chicanos, were writing about or supporting, okay? So that's the reason I said from the beginning, this guy is writing a letter to Chicanos, okay? And he's telling them, I disagree with you guys. And these are my reasons for disagreeing with you guys. Basically, I think it is that. As always, I'm short of time because I wanted to provide you with much more. Especially, I wanted you to hear Sonia Sotomayor, the Supreme Court, because she was always supportive of affirmative action, and she's never denied that she was part of Princeton and Yale, and that was a factor. But she never says that was the only factor, affirmative action, okay? I had to work very hard to catch up because my family was not an upper middle class or even maybe middle class. My mom was barely surviving. So I had to have, the possibility of access, and affirmative action gave me the chance. But I made it because I made the sacrifices and I worked really, really, really hard. And unlike, I think she would argue, those kids, that were privileged from the middle class and upper middle class at Princeton and at Yale, who did not have to do the same I did. So here you have excellence. Sonia Sotomayor, can you tell me that you made the same kind of effort I made as Sonia Sotomayor? And sorry, maybe I'll try to show you, the video that I had for today, because we need to listen also to the other side, to Sonia Sotomayor in this case, Supreme Court, right?